I am the way, the truth, and the life. Do not let your hearts be troubled. So begins the chapter 14 of John's Gospel, a part of the Bible that's often read at funeral services. And we can see why. It's not just the troubled heart reference that makes this reading so appropriate for a funeral, it's also the context of the passage, the thought of Jesus leaving the disciples, the prospect of a bereavement. John 14 is part of what is known as the farewell discourse. Jesus is speaking to his closest followers on the eve of the tumultuous events of Good Friday. He's trying to explain to them what's about to happen, why it has to happen, and how it can bring benefit to those who believe in him. In the previous chapter, he's begun this. In verse 33 he says, I am with you only a little longer. Where I am going, you cannot come. Peter asked the obvious question, Where are you going, Lord? Jesus begins to reply, reiterating that where he was going, his disciples could not follow. At that point, Peter, full of bluster and false courage, says he will follow Jesus anywhere. And Jesus responds by foretelling Peter's denial. The mood becomes sombre. The earlier revelation of Judas as a betrayer, the thought of Jesus leaving them, and now the prospect of Peter denying Jesus. It's not surprising that the disciples needed reassurance and encouragement. And so Jesus continues as he seeks to prepare them. He talks of his Father's house. The only other time he refers to his Father's house is in connection with the temple, the place where Jewish people believed earth and heaven met. So here, Jesus is anticipating a time when heaven and earth will meet in a new way. We can recall that John in Revelation talks of this new heaven and this new earth. And Jesus reassures his disciples that there will be room for all in this new city. There are many rooms in my Father's house. Where he is going to be for the benefit of his disciples. He's going to prepare a place for them so that they can be with him into eternity. He tells them that he will take them there and that they will then know the way. It's at this point that Thomas, I do love Thomas, down to earth, practical, not afraid to ask the question everyone else wants to ask but dares not to. It's at this point that Thomas reverts to Peter's previous question. We don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? I guess that's the question many of us have in our minds when we encounter death. What happens? What's this life after death that we hear about? Where are we going? We just don't know. Jesus responds with some of his most memorable words. Words that have been an encouragement to countless millions over the centuries. Words that emphasize his uniqueness, his relationship with God, and his importance to all. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But to some, those words might seem a bit of an embarrassment. How dare Jesus make such a claim? How arrogant, how divisive, how offensive to followers of other religions. But it's not just here in John's Gospel. Peter, for example, in Acts chapter 4, says quite plainly of Jesus, there's no other name under heaven by which we must be saved. The early Christians were known as followers of the way, presumably drawn from this statement of Jesus. So how does Jesus want us to understand these words and to use these words? I'm sure he doesn't want us to use them in some ways that have been used in the past, ways that have condemned other religions as containing no truth and no good, and asserted that followers of other faiths are all of the devil. Because these are not the words of an arrogant or boastful person. They're the words that come from Jesus, who lived a life of service and self-giving. They're the words that come just a few verses after he's given his disciples the example of service by washing their feet, and words that come just a few chapters before his great act of self-giving on the cross. They're words that also come soon after Jesus said that he was the good shepherd, the true king, saying that he had sheep from other sheepfolds, that he and the Father's desire is to include all rather than to exclude. We have to be careful that we use them as he would have wanted us to use them, not to use them to benefit ourselves or justify ourselves. They are words that, remember, come after a statement, do not let your hearts be troubled. They are words that are given to encourage and to build up, not to destroy or to cause pain. They are words to bring hope, not despair. I am the way, and the truth, and the life. Follow me, and you will find the way to God. Trust in me, and live as I lived, and this will lead you into all truth, and bring you to everlasting life. We may not be able to see the way ahead as Thomas wanted to see it. We certainly can never claim to understand all truth, but we can trust in Jesus and believe his promise that such trust will lead us to life. Life in its fullness, abundant life, life in the new city where heaven and earth meet, life in the presence of God forevermore.